Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and today we'll be taking a look at a custom LEGO Umbaran Starfighter MOC. Now, we got a few LEGO Umbaran ships from the Clone Wars. You can see one of the minifigures right here, actually, back in 2013, theming with the Z95 Headhunter as well as the Umbaran MHC. But unfortunately, we have never gotten an official LEGO version of the Umbaran Starfighter, which was probably one of the most prominent vehicles used in that Clone Wars arc. That is personally one of the most interesting and one of my favorite arcs that ever occurred across that entire season of the TV show, which is why I really wanted to get a MOC to actually be able to showcase how much I liked that arc and series and storyline, and so I'm incredibly excited to share this review with all of you. So this build was actually designed by Brick Boss PDF. You can find them on Rebrickable down in the description below. I have actually linked the instructions, which can be purchased for $10. Alternatively, you can actually go to the Republic Bricks website, which is a site that actually does sell custom LEGO Star Wars MOCs, and purchase this for $100 with all of the bricks included. Although thankfully, I actually did not have to pay that because I actually got this from a used LEGO store, specifically Boston Brick Co., in my opinion, one of the best used LEGO stores out there, where I only paid $40 for this, which included the instructions. So essentially, I paid $30 for the bricks, which is a really great deal, and I would highly recommend checking them out if you are in the Boston area. I think they have probably the best prices I have ever seen for any used LEGO store in the US, and we'll be putting out a separate video on them on my second store to them later on in the future once I actually build all the sets from it. But for now, we'll take a look at this custom LEGO Umbaran Starfighter, and I can't wait to hang it up next to all of the other vehicles from that arc, specifically the Z95 Headhunter, which you can see all the way up at the top there, back from 2013. And so, without further ado, let's take a look at this build. Alright, so this right here is the Umbaran Starfighter from Republic Bricks. It is a really well done model of a starship that we never actually got as an official LEGO set, and thankfully this MOC pretty accurately reflects what it actually appeared like in the Clone Wars TV show. This of course is the infamous starfighter used by the Umbarans in the Shadow War conflict over the arc for the Clone Wars, which actually was eventually hijacked and piloted by the clone troopers themselves to fight back against the Separatists. There's a lot more that was going on in that particular arc, but for the purposes of this review, we'll just be taking a look at the starship in particular. Now, this is really well done because it takes a very unorthodox shape and basically molds it out of unique LEGO pieces. Now, there are a couple of things I do want to note here. It does actually recommend that you build it with the stand, and of course, it does really well capture the framing and silhouette of the ship itself, but unfortunately, that also means that it is pretty fragile. This is not a very easy one to swish around. You can sort of do it. Let me remove it from the stand here and kind of just hold it myself. So you can kind of hold the back part here, and I guess this will swish around pretty well, but the moment that you actually set it down without the landing stand, things will just tend to bend because of the way that everything is attached. So I'm going to tackle this review by just kind of taking a look at this model using a few different points I want to draw attention to, namely the aesthetics of the model, the playability and swishability. Of course, we'll be talking about the durability and the overall accuracy to the TV show itself and the original model. Now, this set has a big pro and honestly a big con in the fact that you can actually adjust the angle of the wings themselves. Now, this is a pro because you can pretty much get the angle exactly how you want, but it's a con because, well, that happens. You see, not everything is held on super tightly. This, for instance, is only held on by 3 studs, and it's very easy to get one wing just not perfectly symmetrical with the other, which eventually, of course, causes problems with actually trying to play around with it and display the model as a whole. Now, moving on to some of the other aspects of the model, obviously the shaping is fantastic for a vessel like this. It really does capture the look and feel of the ship itself. I do just kind of wish there was some sort of a way to secure minifigures in the cockpit itself. I personally can't really think of an easy way to do it unless you wanted to build something that pretty much just takes up the entire bubble sphere, but obviously there are no stud connections inside here. So if you want to put a pilot, we did get some Umbaran pilot minifigs in the Clone Wars, or if you want to put one of the clones in here, they're just kind of going to be awkwardly sitting in the bubble there with no place to actually place themselves on, which I think is a bit of a shame. Having a build for some sort of a seat that could have sat maybe in between some of the bricks here could have been really special, but unfortunately the model just opted to give us the kind of dome piece right here for the actual cockpit and nothing else too special. Although I can't blame them because I cannot imagine it would have been easy to come up with some sort of seating inside. Everything else about the model is actually remarkably simple. Despite this featuring a lot of unique curves to it, this is a pretty just solidly built model. These are just standard slope pieces along the sides. You've got some minor studs on the side building here, but really just to cover up some gaps. And the only special thing are the way that the wings are built, which of course are just in a series of hinges. There's a row of hinges down here, hinge here, a hinge here, one here, and of course a row up at the top. And that's really all you need for this itself. The front gun is just mounted on a click hinge, which unfortunately does mean that it does tend to kind of flop around a little bit. Doesn't really stay in place, you really just kind of have to not mess with it too much, but of course if you're flying it, it doesn't really matter. And this does technically swoosh up. There is a very easy place to hold your hand right here to allow the Starfighter to just kind of fly forwards. It's just, again, the landing is just going to really bend or break the wings. Now, speaking of the wings, I think they're both my favorite and least favorite part of the model, if that makes sense. My favorite because I really do like the shaping of each wing. There's actually a lot of pretty ingenious studs on these side building techniques going on here, where you have some standard sloped elements, but then you also have this particular piece right here that is just formed based on studs on the side building, and all of this just feels like a very smooth curve alongside the overall wing in general. Of course, though, they are super fragile. You bend it the wrong way, things will just break off. Once one thing breaks off, the other things break off, and it's just really frustrating and annoying to try to get these to, first of all, sit in the right place that you want them to. So they sure look good, but they definitely do not hold up under stress. And I'm trying to imagine how LEGO would have made this as an actual official LEGO set. Honestly, probably Technic beams. All of this probably would have been some sort of a Technic beam running, and the wings would have had studs on them, because while this looks really good, it definitely does not hold up to standard LEGO building practices. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is the price. If you want to purchase this model off of the Republic Bricks website, you're going to have to spend over $100 to get the pieces to this model. Now, that being said, you can just get the instructions and build the model yourselves, but I feel like that is a little bit high. That being said, the labor involved in just getting pieces to send kits to people is definitely high. I totally get that, so I can see where it's coming from. Just feels a little bit high for me, which is why I'm incredibly happy that I actually purchased this model from Boston Brick Co., a secondhand used LEGO store, where the model actually came fully built, including a QR code that had the instructions as well. So that was really nice, super nice to be able to get that just already built, so I didn't have to go through the hassle of tracking down all the pieces for a custom model, which of course is something you basically have to do if you want to build any of these specialized custom Star Wars models. Honestly, with that though, there isn't really much else I can say about the model in general. Of course, you can compare this to what it looks like in the actual Clone Wars TV show, and it is remarkably accurate. This is probably the most accurate you're going to get for a minifigure scale representation of a frankly pretty obscure starfighter in the Star Wars universe, but one that absolutely came from one of the best arcs out of the Clone Wars in my opinion. If you haven't seen the Clone Wars, do check out the Umbaran Wars arc. That was a really great one and had some of my favorite characters. Of course, you got Pong Krell and all the clones and whatnot, so a really cool arc to see. And this is a great build to represent that arc. We did get some LEGO sets based off of that series of episodes, namely the Umbaran MHC, which was their large tank crawler thing, as well as the special Z95 Headhunter set. But other than that, we never got the Starfighter, so it's really cool to be able to finally have this to add to my collection of separatist/anti-Republic vehicles. But that's about all I have to say here. Thank you so much for tuning into this review, and I'm super curious what folks think of the Umbaran Starfighter in the flesh. Or in the plastic, I should say. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at the specialized custom LEGO Star Wars Umbaran Starfighter MOC. This is honestly a really interesting one, especially using a lot of non-traditional techniques. I really appreciated the way that it went together, as well as the overall look and form of the vehicle itself, really capturing the very unique shaping of quite an interesting craft in universe. This is probably one of the most unique looking starfighters across all of Star Wars, and while this isn't the most sturdy sturdy of MOCs. It definitely does have a lot of fragility in the wings, as I did mention in the review. It is still really fun to swoosh around and really play around with it, and it does stay together for the most part. You can kind of just grip it on the back with your hands and just swoosh it, especially if you take the stand off. This just feels so satisfying to fly around with the ship itself and just have it be going through space. So it is very, very cool to own it. Really, the only complaint is that this does not have actual space to seat the minifigures, because there isn't really a way to actually put any studs inside the cockpit itself. So you kind of just have to pretend by putting a minifigure inside, and he'll be rattling around as you swoosh him. But for the most part, this is a great display model that, as you can see, can really be swooshed around to some degree, which makes this even more fun. And I would highly recommend. The instructions are only $10, so if you do want the instructions, you can check them out in the description below. And do let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this model, and what do you think of that arc of season 4 of the Clone Wars? That was definitely one of my favorites. So do let me know if you've built this yourselves as well, and what your experience has been with this model. With that, we've summed up this review. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.